In this lecture, we will talk about user and group administration. You will learn how to add a user with default and custom options, delete a user, add a group, delete a group, modify user accounts, and the commands we will use: user add, group add, user del, group del, and user mod. Let's start with the first example, how to add a user. To add a user, we will use the command user add. And we will add a user called user2. User2 has been created, and we can check it by using a couple of options. We can check it by running the id command, id user2, the user we just created. And then this command tells you the user ID of the user2, group ID of the user2, and the username, which is user2. So that's how you can find more information about the user you just created. Also, to keep in mind, there are a couple of files that get updated when you create a user. For example, Etsy password gets updated. This is where you can find the user information. So let me cat that file. As you can see, there are many users listed in here. All the users that get created on your system, they show up in here. Let's grab just the user2. This is the user. To see just one user, we can run the same command. But instead of cat, we can just grep for user2. As you can see right here, this is the user that we just created. Currently, it's showing the user2. X represents the password, which gets stored in Etsy shadow file. This is the user ID. This is the group ID. This is the home directory of the user. And this is the shell that user will be using. We just created a user with the user add command. And the reason your system knows how to add all these settings or these values when you create a user are stored in a file, which is the default user add file. So let's look at that file. That's how your system knows where to find these settings when you create a user. So let me cat that file. Etsy default user add. This is the file that stores the default values. So when you create a user, just by running the user add command, it looks at all these settings stored in this file. That's how it knows how to create a user's home directory, which shell will be assigned to this user, and so on. You can also bypass these settings by creating a user with custom options, which we will cover shortly. Now that we have created a user called user2, let's move on to deleting that user. To delete a user, you will look at the second example, which is user del command. This command is used to remove or delete a user. So if I just type in user2 and hit enter, this user will be deleted. But the home directory of that user will not be deleted by you running this command. To delete a user with that user's home directory, you would need to run -r option. This will delete the user's home directory as well. So if I hit enter, if you get no message, that means the user2 is deleted. So is the user's home directory. So let's run the command again, id user2. As you can see, the user2 has been deleted. It's showing no such user. That's how you can create a user with default values, and that's how you can delete a user. You can also add a user with custom options. Let's look at an example so you have a better idea what I mean by creating a user with custom options. For example, we can run the user add command, and we can type in -c option. The C option means it's a comment. So you can add a comment when you're creating a user. So let's create a comment with the user's full name. Usually when you create a user gets a user ID assigned, but you don't see its name. Usually you want to add a comment in there to make sure whoever's looking at the user's file can see the user's name, if that's what you want to do. So now I will type in the username is J Smith and the comment is John Smith. So if I hit enter, that user will get created. So let's run id command to see if the user has been created. jsmith. So as you can see, that user has been created, the group ID has been assigned, it's showing the primary group, and jsmith is the user ID. Let's look at that user in Etsy password. So if I grep for jsmith in Etsy password file, this is where the user account information gets stored. As you can see, the jsmith user is created. That's the user ID, the group ID, John Smith, and this is the comment that we added. So that's how you can use different options when you create a user. For example, if this was a CEO of the company and you wanted to add a comment in there, so when someone looks at his account, they know it's the CEO, you can add that comment in here. Let's create a user with a different option. User add, and this time we'll use -G option. So -G represents user's primary group that user is assigned to. When you don't mention this option, usually by default it creates a user's group called user2. If you're creating a user called jsmith, it will create a user's group as jsmith. You can use -G option to mention the user's group that user will be assigned to as the primary group. So in this case, you will use user add -G and then mention the group name. In this case, we will name the group SAP and then type in the username. User2 is the user we're adding again. So if I hit enter, let's run the ID command again, user2. As you can see, the group ID here shows SAP. So when you create a user with -G option, you're not only creating a user, you're also assigning it to a particular group. So that's how you can use various options. You can also combine many different options when creating a user. So for example, we can use the user add command, use the -G option to add a group to that user. So let's add SAP as a group. And then we'll use -S option. -S option mentions the user's shell, the shell that will be assigned to that user. So in this case, we'll just type in /bin/bash. Now next is we'll add a comment again. So for example, this user is a sales VP, so we'll just add that here within the quotes. Next, we'll use -M -D to mention user's home directory. So home, and then name of the user or the user ID will be J Doe. So for example, this was a user called John Doe. We're just creating that user's ID, J Doe. We're mentioning the group that user will be assigned to. We're also mentioning the shell and also a comment in there. And we're also mentioning the user's home directory. So if I hit enter, all these settings, all these values will get applied to that account. So that's how you can create a user with custom options. As you can see, this user has been added to the group. The primary group is SAP. Now let's grep for that user and look at the passwd file. So as you can see, JDO is the username. This is the user ID, group ID. This is the comment we added, sales VP. And this is user's home directory that we mentioned. And this is user's shell that the user is going to be using. When we create a user with custom options, we can pretty much change anything or decide anything how we want to create the user. To add a group, you can use group add command. Let's call this group sales. So we're just adding a group called sales, and there's a file that gets updated when you create a group. We can cat that file. It's the group file under Etsy directory, cat Etsy group. So as you can see, all the groups listed in this file are the groups that are on our system. And the one we just created is sales. So this is the group sales that we just created. That's how you can create a group. We can also use grep to look at just that particular group that we just created. For example, we can grep for sales group. and it'll just show you the group that you just created. We can also delete that group. To delete a group, you can run group del command. Group del, and let's just delete the group that we just created, sales. If I hit enter, the group will be deleted. Now let's grep for that group again. As you can see, nothing was found. The group has been deleted. We can also modify existing user accounts. So for example, we have a user called jdoe. Let's grep that user first, see what the values are assigned to this user. So if I grep user called jdoe in its passwd file, as you can see, this is the jdoe, but the comment in here says sales VP. Now what if the comment has changed? What if the user's title has changed? If that user has been promoted to, let's say, CEO, and we want to change that, we can modify that information by using the user mod command. That will modify the user mod. So let's use -c option again to add the comment or modify the comment. So currently it says sales VP. Let's change it to CEO. And then we'll mention the username, hit enter. Now if we grep for that user again, grep jdoe in its passwd file, hit enter. Now it says CEO. So the comment has been changed. This is how you can modify a user account. Let's use a couple of other options. We can also use user mod command to change a user's primary group. So let's look at this user's primary group. Let's run the id command on jdoe. That's the user. As you can see, this user's primary group is SAP. What if we wanted to change that? Let's add him to another group, maybe sales group. So we can run the user mod command with -g option. We'll call it sales and then the name of the user. The group that we're adding this user to does not exist. So let's add that group first. So let's use the group add command and let's add the group sales. Now let's run that other command again to change the user's primary group. If I hit enter, it will create the user and the primary group will change. Let's run the id command on jdoe. As you can see, the user's group has been changed to sales. Earlier it was showing SAP, now it's showing sales. We can also add more than one group to that user. Currently it is showing only one group to that user. Let's add one more group to this user, or make this user member of two groups. So to do that, we can run the same command that we ran earlier, user mod -g, but -g is just to add one group, the primary group of the user. But if we use a uppercase G, then we can mention more than one group. So here, what we'll do is we will add this user to a group called SAP as well. So if I hit enter, it will add this user to SAP group as well. Let's run the id command again on jdoe. As you can see, the sales group is there and SAP group is there as well. Let me make the screen a little bit bigger. Run the command again. As you can see, the SAP group is there and the sales group is there as well. So we can add this user to multiple groups. And by using many different options with user mod command, you can accomplish these tasks. I hope you learned something useful in this lecture as well, and I'll see you in the next one.